one, go! Woo! Okay, here we go. I've been working on this talk for about 10 years. I have given it a couple of times before, but in the last 2 weeks, I've rearranged the slides so many times, I have no idea what slide's coming next. So we'll just kind of pick along. I'm Steve Erickson. My wife Jenny and I run a farm called Chaos Springs in the middle of the North Island. We've been there 23 years. Prior to that, we were market gardeners in the U.S., in Utah for 20 years. So we've been at it way too long. We've been longtime biodynamic growers, and this topic, physics in agriculture, is what I'm attempting to do today is to tie together some of the things that we have learned in the last 20 years about the kind of the correlation between what's going on in the world that's being revealed by quantum physics and tying it into things like biodynamics. So I'm going to go through a bunch of slides that to kind of lay the groundwork of where this knowledge comes from. And this is my journey, and it's kind of how I've figured out things. So one of the things I always refer to is that there are no facts in the world. There is an interpretation of data generated. And so we don't really have any facts. The only facts you have are the things you see and can touch, and now we're finding out that those aren't even real. So we're kind of in trouble here a little bit. So I want to explain my journey a little bit, and but what I want to do is I want to get to, so what? Does this have any practical applications? And we know that we have, going way back, indigenous people, cultures used very different systems of agriculture than we use today. Probably one of the few that has come forward into modern times. Oh, there's a few, but biodynamics is a big one, okay, that works in this realm, so to speak. But one of the things that I'm going to try to convey today is the idea that you've kind of got to find your own pathway to acceptance of this sort of stuff before it's ever going to work for you, okay? So that's kind of what it's about. So we're going to go through some theoretical stuff. I want to get through that so we can talk about the practical applications. And we're even going to try some little demonstrations here. I'm going to get pick on a few people and see where we go with that. Okay? So we've got 3 topics, 3 titles here. Managing farm energetics. We want to get to the managing part. Physics in agriculture. We want to tie physics into this realm. We use chemistry and biology a lot. For a long time, we only used chemistry. We use biology more. Most of the people in this room will be familiar with biological management. We want to talk about this idea of quantum-based agriculture, which is how we take these concepts of physics and how we implement them. And we want to get through that, and then we want to talk about the practical applications that are out there and a bit about those. And then we're going to do, like I say, a little bit of demo. So we'll get underway here. And questions, freely ask questions as we go. I always feel like questions asked at the moment are probably better answered than later on. So I'm happy to stop any time. So here we go. So let's start. Okay, so what is energy, right? What is it, this energy thing we talk about? It's kind of this vague thing that nobody seems to really understand, although we probably understand it a lot more. And here's a guy that seemed to know quite a bit about it. I can't remember what band he was in. He's a guitarist. So E equals MC squares. What does that mean? Boy, this is a dumber crowd than I thought. No. What's that? Enthusiasm equals the mass of people with resonating consciousness. There we go. That'll do. Trust James. I have to just stop for a half a second and see who came the farthest to get to underground. I already know the answer. Yeah, you? Colorado. Alberta. You're getting close. You're not. Sequoia?
I came from Toronto this morning.
Toronto this morning. Anybody farther? Oh, one more. Venus. Okay. Skoy has to stand up. This is my daughter, and she's come here. And the reason she's here today is to heckle me. So, go ahead. No. Boo, yeah. I actually hid her tomatoes before she came. So, anyway, I like James' description, E equals mc squared. The common one is energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, which basically is telling us that energy and mass are the same thing in different forms, correct? That's kind of how people like me interpret it. So what does that, this thing's a bit slow. Do I have to point it in a different direction?
You try point it this way, it's so bad.
Okay. So, yeah, here's what we've got. Energy and mass are different forms of the same thing. So that's what we need to think about a little bit today. So a hydrogen atom, we'll start here. I want to do a little sort of display. So a hydrogen atom is 1/10 of 1/1,000,000th of a millimeter in diameter. It's pretty small. The proton is 100,000 times smaller than that. The electron that circles around it is 1,000 times smaller than that. Okay? So what I want to do is I've got an expanded proton here. Have I got the right one? Who feels like a proton today? Okay, there we go. And then, hold on. Oh no, there we go. I have here in my hand the electron. Now, who's the most annoying person in this room? Raise your hand. Okay. And let me ask, what gives you the title as the most annoying person in the room?
You wait till I think of the megally question.
Okay. And your name again is?
Daniel.
Daniel. Okay, so we've got Daniel and we've got Enoch. Okay, Daniel and Enoch. So Enoch is the proton and Daniel is the electron. Now where did I do with my thing? Here we go. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Oops, and I won't if I go backwards. Okay, so this gives you a perspective of size. So if we take a basketball, which that is 24 centimeters, and then a pea, which is about 1 centimeter. I didn't have a pea, but I had it pretty close. The electron, Daniel, we need you to move away. Get up and start moving away. We're trying to represent this relationship, right? So we need Daniel out there. Yeah, a bit farther. Yeah, about 10 kilometers. Okay, you can come back. You're not that annoying. All right, so what this means is that we as people and all the things around us, I mean, we're all made of atoms, right? Although we'll see that there's more to it than that. We're mostly empty space. Perspective of size, cut it right out, going the wrong way, going the wrong way. 99% empty space. That's us, 99% empty space. Now, I know you all have friends that you know are 99% empty space, right? I might be one of them, actually. But there's got to be more to it than that. And when I first...
Space is just tiny particles we haven't yet discovered.
Yes, okay. So when I first wrote this was very relevant because we knew a lot less about the rest of the universe. So we're going to look at a few of the kind of definitions that define this quantum realm. Okay? So we have quantum field theory. Okay, and what this basically says is that the whole universe is just this field of energy. And everything in it is a disturbance of that energy in some way. And so all we are is we're a disturbance. Once again, our friends are. We don't think we are. But, and actually, there's a whole lot of disturbance. I think there's a few politicians here today that are disturbances. Yeah, they're over there. Yeah, they won't come here, I'm sure. So really, everything we see is a bunch of vibrations is what it is. And you know, if you go way into this stuff, they say, well, you don't actually see the vibration doesn't actually materialize until you look at it. And, you know, Einstein always said, I refuse to believe that the moon's not there when I'm not looking. But anyway, this is the reality of the world we live in. But we can't deny that we can see and touch and feel each other either, okay? That's more of a reality to me. There's a few other... That's the universe as we know it today. That is the slide. Okay, we got it. There's a slide, blank slide. Like I say, I've rearranged these a whole bunch of times, right? Okay, so quantum mechanics, the important thing here is this typically occurs at below the scale of atoms. So even though we just made Daniel run 10 kilometers out and back, we're dealing with a system that's actually below that level. They've tried for a long time to define this, and now they define them as the quantum field theory. How do we prove that? That's always the tricky part. But in past times, it was often referred to as the ether, and still there is a lot of cultures and now people who refer to that as the ether. In biodynamics, they certainly do. Okay. Now, do we have any physicists in the room? Oh, thank God. Because I'd probably just get torn to shreds here. Then there's the field called quantum biology, and that's the study of the quantum level and how it affects biology. And that's a part we're pretty interested in. We want to know how this energy field is affecting the biological function of our soil. And we have this quote this part that I love. Okay, so I'll go back just for half a second. So we've got all this information, and we've known about a lot of this for a long time, since, the turn of the last century, 1900, 1930s. And a lot of it really puzzled a lot of the early people that did the studies on this. And one of them was Niels Bohr. So Niels Bohr was a Danish theoretical physicist, and he contributed significantly to atomic structure and quantum theory, and he earned the Nobel Prize in 1922. So we're going back a couple of years, over 100 years, and he was famous for a whole bunch of things. And his favorite quote of mine is, "If quantum mechanics hasn't profoundly shocked you, you haven't understood it yet." All right? The next one, that's right. No, I keep crushing the wrong button. Typical. Edwin Schrodinger. Now, probably a lot of you have heard of Edwin Schrodinger, the Schrodinger cat, right? You can't know if the cat's alive or dead till you open the box. So he was also in the 30s, Nobel Prize in Physics, 1933, for his contribution to atomic theory, and famous for the Schrodinger cat. His quote that I love is, "I don't like it, and I'm sorry I had anything to do with it." Okay, moving on. So what is this thing So what is this thing agriculture in physics? Okay, so we've got three areas that we work in as agriculturists. We work in chemistry. We've been doing that for a long time. Biology, we've been working in that for a long time, but it's come to the forefront much more recently, especially with the likes of Elaine Ingham. How many people know of Elaine Ingham? How many know that she passed away yesterday? Yeah, a moment of silence. She has contributed more to our knowledge than probably anybody as far as our understanding of soil biology. And I was fortunate enough to be one of her first students and one of the first soil food web consultants in the world, actually, with a group in New York in 2003. And I spent quite a bit of time with Elaine and got to know her reasonably well. And I realized she made most of it up, But so... So physics, though, that's the science that connects chemistry to biology, right? That's how we understand how the two work together, and that's how we understand a lot of how each of them work alone. So if that's the one that's making everything work, we should know more about it, and we should learn to work with maybe that first, or at some point in our journey, to round out the whole thing. Okay, now we have a few other terms, agrophysics, which that's kind of combining physics and the study of agronomy, which we're interested in. And then we have this term quantum agriculture. Now this is a term that was coined maybe before this, but by a man named Hugh Lovell. People know Hugh Lovell? Okay, so Hugh Lovell has also passed away, but he was a long-time biodynamic guy, and all of his stuff came out of Biodynamics. And we've got the biodynamic group here. We've got James Milton, and there's a few other. Who else is on the biodynamic board? Yep, got Bridget back in the corner. Yep. Name again. Simon, yeah. And if you haven't embraced biodynamics, I think you'll be more receptive after today. I hope that's the goal. And we're going to talk a little bit about Hugh Lovell and his contributions, because he's contributed hugely to a different understanding of orgs. And disclaimer there, I'm not a physicist, and I'm so pleased there are none in the audience. I'm sure there is. They're hiding. You can't see them until you look at them. So don't look. Okay. So here were Hugh Lovell's kind of 4 principles of quantum agriculture, and he had a ton of information available on his website. Most of it's vanished, and it's hard to find a lot of it. There are videos around, and there is information available. I've just very luckily got a whole series of his lectures, which I've been listening to. So his concepts were observing nature, enhancing soil health, utilizing biological process, and integrating holistic approach. So that tells us almost nothing of what to do, but most of those things we do, right? Who doesn't do all of that already if you're a regenerative or organic farmer? Those are the basics of probably any system. But he took it much farther than that with his practical stuff. So a little bit about, so I'm shifting gears just a little bit, tell a little bit about my personal journey through biodynamics and understanding this realm. And I'm going to run way out of time, I can tell already, but that's okay. So I first learned about biodynamics in 1981 when I was chasing my wife Jenny, who isn't here to hear my bad stories for the 4,000th time, and went to a farm that was run by a man named John Pierce. Anybody know of John Pierce? You have a few people. He's since passed away. He was one of the very early biodynamic practitioners in New Zealand. And I went to the farm. I was a sort of a love-lost wandering mountain climber, and New Zealand had a lot of appeal besides Jenny. And I came to the farm, and John explained biodynamics to me. Well, it made perfect sense. I mean, I had no agricultural background at all at the time, other than my parents were cane gardeners. But growing up in the 60s, I knew there were a whole bunch of other worlds out there. So I embraced the concepts of it right away, and I started doing the practices. But as Jenny and I got married, and we developed a market garden operation in Utah at 6,000 feet, a little 2-acre plot, we practiced biodynamics, right? And we practiced it fairly religiously. And people always ask me, will you ever see any different results? Well, I don't know. I've always done it, so don't have anything to compare it to. It's what we've always done. But being a mechanic by training, I struggled with how it worked. I was used to taking things apart and putting them back together. And I couldn't take this apart. I couldn't take it apart, first of all, and I certainly couldn't pack it together. And so it was hard for me to really embrace what was going on and be a true believer. You know, nobody's ever converted me to Christianity or religion because they can't prove it. But then I ran into Phil Callahan. People know Phil Callahan? Okay. So Phil Callahan was an entomologist, and he was stationed in the moorlands of Scotland, I believe, and he was in the military in the 40s during World War II. And what he was doing was he was guiding planes across the ocean with radio waves, right? And yet he was an entomologist, so he was in this little cabin by himself, and he was watching insects and moths and various things, and had a whole lot of time to think. And he suddenly kind of put 2 and 2 together. He says, well, I've got these antennas, and I've got these radio waves that we can't see, that we know exist, and I'm guiding giant airplanes through the air, and I'm seeing all of these insects, and they've got antennas, and they're going places, and they seem to know exactly where they're going. So what his life work became as a result of that is he started studying frequencies. And over time, he developed some instruments to measure very low-level frequencies. And his theories that he put together was that insects find what they're after, mates or food, through frequency. And they have antennas to pick that up. And he pretty much proved that every single thing he tested put out a frequency. It didn't matter if it was a rock or, well, some humans don't put out much, but again, but all rocks do. All rocks do. So rocks are important. So anyway, this changed my whole world, because suddenly I could take it apart and put it back together. And I'm not saying that that's going to do it for you, but the important thing here is if you're going to embrace this, you've got to be part of the system, and you've got to get to some space in your life that says, okay, this works. I can buy this. I'm going to manage this realm of my agricultural system. Here we go again. All right. So again, what he showed us is moths find their food not only by scent, but scent gives out frequencies, but by frequencies in the extremely low range. And they do this as a result of frequencies. I've just said all this. I don't need to say it again. By the way, if anybody is interested in the slides from this talk, you can email me and I'll send you the whole lot, because we'll go through some of it pretty quickly. Okay, so what we have here as in this world, so what it came down to is it came down to the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so we've got this thing called the EM spectrum. And that's, it's mostly the spectrum of visible light, but it's also the spectrum of sound, and it's responsible for almost everything that we see. And yet, as humans, we only see this much of the spectrum. So there's all of this other stuff going on outside of that spectrum that is around us all the time that we can't see. Now, if you work with some of the systems around, you start to see it, or at least feel more of it as time goes on. Enough. Okay, so again, we'll go back just a little bit. So we've got mass and energy. World's really made up of energy. It's perceived as mass. Particles and waves. That's what they talk about a lot in the quantum world, particles and waves. So we're going to forget about the particle part for a minute, and we're going to talk about waves, because electromagnetic field works on waves, right? That's what it works on. And if anybody's been in this situation, you probably aren't here. But that's, so we all deal with waves. Every day, radio waves, television, we're dealing with it all day. We're using technology all the time that is using the electromagnetic spectrum. Every person in this room, is there anybody in here without a cell phone? 1, 2, yay. I'm glad you don't have one, okay? So you're all connected to a frequency that will come straight to you and bypass everybody else, okay? So that's how specific this frequency system is. And yet, we only can see part of it. And all the conventional farmers that are in this, not in this room, they even see less. Okay? But, so let's just take a little brief look at, because animals, they can see other things that we don't necessarily perceive. So here's just a collection of ones that I found, that I stole off the internet. So sea turtles can sense the Earth's magnetic field, and that helps them navigate. How many people can sense the magnetic field of the Earth? Anybody? Okay. Yeah. Oh, there's somebody back there. We will have people in this room who can. Okay. Sharks detect electrical fields generated by muscle contractions in their prey. So if you see a shark, don't contract your muscles, whatever you do. I don't know how that would be possible, but... Okay, some snake species can see heat. They actually visually see the field coming, the heat waves coming off, kind of like a thermal scope, and that allows them to bite you or eat you. Arctic reindeer can see ultraviolet light, and they spot their next meal, and that helps them avoid predators. And elephants communicate over long distances with infrasonic sound. They pound on the ground, right? And send signals out at great distances. And I think, have I got one on whales too? Rabbits, probably a lot of animals communicate that way. Moths can hear ultrasonic calls and echolocating bats. And so how do we perceive the world? This is the normal group of things that we use. We use our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, and we use our whole body touch. So, okay, those particular things allow us to perceive the world that we've got, but what else is there that allows us to perceive? And I was supposed to have a whiteboard here, but I don't, but we'll just, what else is there? There's intuition, clairvoyancy. What's that? Imagination. What is it? Say again. A gut feeling. What's that? Remote viewing? Explain. Oh. Connecting with aliens. Okay. Remote viewing. Right. Okay. Yep.
I guess there's your etheric body, your aura.
Your aura, your etheric body. Yep. Instinct and hindsight helps us, you know. What else? Any other things? Fear. Okay. Fear. That's certainly an instinct that we react to and respond to. Yep. What? Emotions. Huh? Subconscious things of different kinds. Okay, yeah, physical responses that you can't always explain. How many people have had the hair raise on the back of their neck? Okay? Has anybody ever had a home invasion? Okay? You will have the hair raise on the back. Believe me, I've experienced it. It scares the shit out of you. A couple others we had in the last one, a couple of people said meditation. Okay? I've recently, after a long refusing to acknowledge the idea, started doing it, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing. Yeah, I can fall asleep faster than I ever did before. Another comment that was made was prayer, and I kind of went, you know, I grew up in Utah with the Mormons, and no offense to any Mormons in the group, but I mean, that really struck a chord with me, and yet one of the essential ingredients to start to using the system is belief. Belief before result. You've kind of got to but you've got to get something that allows that belief to happen. And a lot of people do. With religion, a lot of people do. It's sad, but it does happen. So there's a big list there of how we perceive the world, right? And that's the what else that there's supposed to be. I didn't dare write on that board. I didn't think they'd like that. So back to this electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so I'll just read this off because I can't remember most of it, even though I might know it. Magnetism is responsible for all of the phenomena we encounter in daily life, almost, except maybe gravity. Ordinary matter takes form as a result of intermolecular forces between individual molecules in matter. So it's the force in between the molecules. It's the force that holds those things together inside atoms, but it's much broader than that. Okay, it governs the process involved in chemistry and biology, which arise from the interaction between electrons inside and out of the magnet. Okay, so that doesn't really give us a lot to work with, but it gives us a concept. So now we go back a little to Callahan for a minute, and we say, okay, so there's all this energy out there, and we know from telephones and planes and moths that antennas are an important part of how it works. So let's just take a little work at antennas. So there's a lot of types of antennas that we use. We see G5 towers going up all the time, and they're both sending and receiving signals all the time. And that's how so much of our modern world works, and it's how a lot of our agricultural systems work, whether we like it or not. Oh, easy. Okay, thank you. I've got the monitor over here keeping me on track, and yeah, my usual monitor Jenny isn't here, so she keeps me on track. So here's insect antennas. You know, and you go, okay, I've seen insect antennas. Now that puts a little different spin on them. Now I know maybe why they've got them. Come on. Oops. I keep getting that screen. Must means I'm done. My antenna's failing me. Antennas don't really work. Just move me up a couple. What's that? The black hole. Oh, no, back. Cow back. Plant back. Okay, insect. Now, one forward. I'll let you do. Okay, so there. So plants. Well, if you really look at them and the structure of plants, they look like antennas too. And they're receiving information all the time. And we can influence that information by a number of means. Okay, I'm going to try again. Oh, you got it. Cow. You could look at this as an antenna, right? Is that animal receiving information in some way? And it's interesting that Steiner said we'd make a preparation with those horns that have the ability to receive information. Next. Yeah, next. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so your hair is an antenna. My apologies to the people who don't have hair. But that isn't where it stops. Next one. So you are an antenna. You are constantly receiving and you're bombarded with information from all sorts of places. And we accustom ourselves to ignore most of it. But you have the ability to increase that sensitivity and start to receive a whole lot more information if you choose to go down that path. But that just depends on if you can get there. Old cultures of agriculture, they use this all the time, and you hear stories of the Aborigines when the white men first came, and they were trying to show them all of the things that they used, and the white men couldn't see it, and they couldn't believe that. But it's right there. Why don't you see it? And so we hear these stories. What evidence do we have? Maybe not that much. So, but it's just again a matter of getting your head around that concept that it's going on. Next. Okay, so how it all works, everything's sending out some kind of vibration, transmitting waves, almost everything acts as an antenna, and the key is to utilizing this information. So you've got to be able to sense what the information is, and then eventually you've got to learn how to send out the signals as well. Okay? Next. So we have a couple of modern concepts that are circulating now that help us maybe quantify this whole thing. One of them is quorum sensing. Now, do we have any of the quorum sense people here? Okay. Can you explain quorum sensing to everyone? No. Okay. Anybody else want to take a stab? I'll take a stab. Where's Sam? Come on, you're the founder. Yeah. Okay. So as I understand it, you guys help me correct this, but this is the communication that occurs through signaling molecules called autoinducers, and they help regulate gene expression. Okay. Does that mean anything to anybody? Maybe, maybe not. But we know that that exists at a biological level. They're able to communicate through this thing called quorum sensing. Next. Epigenetics. Does anybody know that term? Do people know that term? Okay. Anybody want to take a shot at giving us an explanation? Come on, Bridget. Okay. Yeah. My best understanding is epigenetics is the way genes express themselves, and it's a method that can turn genes on and off. And a lot of what happens in plants and in humans isn't necessarily the genes, excuse me, that they have. It's whether or not they're functioning and whether or not they're turned on and off. And of course, genetic modification, which I'm wearing this shirt intentionally to say, no, we cannot go here. We shouldn't be messing with that, at least not in this way. Not in this way. Okay? And there are some people here that need to be told that. Huh? Over in that tent. Okay. When we get done, we're going to charge over there in mass. Okay? But I believe one of the things that's starting to emerge that we can start to use in this area of physics and agriculture is we can start to learn to influence epigenetics and turn genes on and off to improve our agricultural systems, okay? So whether we need to know that or not, then now let's move on and let's take a look at practical applications that have been around for quite a long time and that actually you can embrace as systems that exist. There are products that exist on the market that you can embrace to kind of go down this path, and there are things that you can do and will do. And so here are the ones that I came up with. There are probably more. Biodynamics is the leader of the pack. There's no question. Once I read Phil Callahan's stuff and embraced it, I suddenly understood how biodynamics worked for me. There's a lot of old-time biodynamic practitioners that will argue with that, say, no, that's not how it works, and they might be right. But for me, that's what made it work for me. So that was important. Radionics, how many people have heard of radionics? Okay, radionics has several different applications we'll talk about briefly. Homeopathy, people know homeopathy. How does homeopathy work? Potentizing, okay? It's taken small amounts of something and increasing the frequency of it. And the best explanation I heard of the other day was you've got, say, an illness, and an illness has a frequency, right? It's a wave like this. Well, what homeopathy does is they create the same wave, we treat like with like, and they shoot it back the other way. And if you've ever seen two waves collide, what happens? Cancel each other out. So what we're doing with homeopathy is we're canceling out a certain wave, or we can turn it the other way and amplify a wave of energy in some way to get a given result. How many people have had success with homeopathy? Yeah, it works. There's no question if you get it right, it works. Okay, electroculture. I haven't done much with this, but are people familiar with electroculture? Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that and a little bit about kinesiology too. Okay, next slide. Okay, so biodynamics, I'm not going to go into length. We can go over to the biodynamic tent and get all this information. 1924, he gave us a series of lectures. He explained it in a particular way that I think has stalled biodynamics in the modern world. He did a thing called spiritual science. I think we need to reinvent biodynamics a little bit because biodynamics has great power. It has the solution to many of the problems. And what my understanding today about biodynamics is that what it's about organization, all right? It's about organizing, it's about influence your environment so that you get an organization on your farm that is functional, all right? And you do that through energy, waves, and influence. And you're part of that system. You need to be part of that system influencing that whole system. And in fact, there are, excuse me, one of the comments I heard, which I quite like, is the only reason that Steiner developed all these very sort of strange, by some standards, processes was to get you to believe. Because believe me, you won't do them many times if you don't buy into it. You know, you won't be burying cow horns or getting stag splatters unless you have a deep belief that that's really working, or you've had some experiences. And so you can take it beyond that. Okay, next. Steiner's had a set of principles that, or a sense of preparations that he suggested using in a particular way. A couple of main ones were 500 and 501. One was for below ground, the 500, and 501 was for above ground. And then the other preparations were mostly for the compost, but every one of them is associated with a particular thing. Like 500 stimulates soil life, quartz is photosynthesis, yarrow is trace elements, chamomile stabilizes nitrogen. So every one of those individual preparations also had a specific job that they were doing. Next slide. And this just explains a little bit more. In addition to that, every preparation was also associated with a mineral, generally, of some kind of mineralization. So when you were trying to balance minerals or whatnot, you could look towards those various things. And one of the, I've read the agricultural course several times, and yeah, it takes a while, but there's certain things that stick out. And one of the big comments that Steiner made that has always stuck with me is that life begins when cosmic energy interacts with mineral, and that's when spontaneously life explodes. And so when you think of that, everybody says, well, where does life come from? Well, there's an explanation I can buy, okay? It comes from energy and waves interacting with the substance of the earth. Next. Okay, now how many people have heard of May Bruce? Okay, so May Bruce was around the same time as Steiner. Is that about the same time as Steiner? Huh? 10 years later. So what she did was she looked at biodynamics, and I think she was a biodynamic practitioner, but what she said, this is too hard for most people. And so what she did was she basically took more or less the same plants and came up with the idea that, well, we don't really need the vessels or we don't need to energize them. They've got the energy in themselves to work. And so there's a New Zealand woman, Katrina Wolf, who I don't think Katrina made it, did she? Who specializes in May Bruce. No, she doesn't even look like May West. May Bruce's herbal activators, and she's promoting that, and it's a much simpler system. Now, I don't have any experience here. We're looking at it, but it's just another way to use this energetic system. Next. We talked a bit about homeopathy, and I think we've got enough practitioners in the room. We don't need to go over that anymore. That's kind of how it's, again, working on the energy scale. It's probably the most widespread, not medical, herbal, or health practice in the world. It's still practiced all over the world, even though the medical profession has tried religiously to shut it down. Okay, but it's coming back in a pretty big way, and no matter what you think of American politics, I'm rooting for RFK because he's doing some amazing things with health. Next. Okay, I'll go. Radionics. This is related to machinery mostly, or devices that transmit energy. Okay, so you can, and they also can be used for assessing soils, plants, health, and they can do analysis, evaluation of materials, soils, and plants. They can do broadcasting of energy. They're used for a variety of things. They're available on the internet. Hugh Lovell worked with them quite a bit. Hugh Lovell also worked both with radionics, but he also developed a thing called a broadcasting tower. Now, these are interesting. Do people know of broadcast towers or cosmic pipes? Or they've got a few names. No, back. Yeah, that's okay. You can. Yeah, no, go back. So they are sort of a complicated thing. They're a pipe with some coils and resistors in them. I'm not going to go into great detail, but it's quite amazing. What you do is you take whatever substance that you are trying to influence, and you put them into the vessels of the cosmic pipe, and you broadcast that influence. Now, the most convincing thing, I haven't done any of these, but I watched a fairly convincing video from Graham Sate the other day, who put a broadcasting tower on a new piece of property, and he did serious soil testing and tested all the minerals in the soil, and he put those minerals into the broadcaster, and then he tested the soil every 2 weeks without applying anything, and he saw consistent increases in those very minerals week after week. Okay? So one of the ways that he contained that is you also put a map of your farm into the broadcaster so it stays contained within a certain area. Okay, right. Yeah, move ahead. Okay, so I've got a little thing in here that explains the broadcasters, but we won't look at that too much. We want to get on to a little bit of practical. Electroculture. Yeah, go ahead.
So if you had, say, 3 or 4 farms within your area
That's why you, yeah, that's why you put the map in. Well, what's that? But that's why they do. Well, the other interesting thing about Graham Sates is he was testing the minerals in the neighbors, and they weren't changing.
Shouldn't you be 10 kilometers over this?
Yeah. Okay, I'm rapidly running out of time here. I don't know a lot. So broadcast towers work by sending out information. Electroculture works by bringing it in. We got a couple of examples here. I'm going to whiz through this next. You can build them real easy yourself. There's lots of information on the internet. There's lots of counter information on the internet about electroculture. Next, here's a few examples of different ones. Next. Okay, I want to talk for a minute about water and vortexes. We're really into vortexing water. There's a lot of information about structured water and the benefits of structured water. The point I want to make here is trying to, Steiner originally talked about creating these vortexes, and I really loved Hugh Lovell's explanation of what happens in a vortex. So in a vortex, when you create a big vortex, what is happening is the water actually separates out into what they call laminate layers. So it goes into various layers of structure of water, and you can test this in a vortex by temperature. So your warmer and heavier water will go to the outside of the vortex, or the warmer and lighter water will go to the outside of the vortex, and the colder and heavier water will go to the middle. And then what you do when you reverse that flow is you break up that vortex, right? And so you don't destroy the order you created, but what you do is you disturb it and you recreate it in the other direction. And according to Hugh, what you're doing is you're building on generation after generation of order. So you're getting a much higher order. And it's sort of like the generational thing of plants. Each generation hopefully builds on the last generation. Doesn't seem to work in humans, but plants and animals, you get something. Well, most of our kids are probably smarter than we are. So that's kind of the concept behind vortexes. And we're big believers in vortex, and all our machinery is created around vortexing water. Okay, next. We'll just whiz through here. I want to get to the good part. Yeah, go ahead. People can look at this. This is our dynamic mixer based on vortexing. We would have had it here if the ferry had cooperated, but that's okay. Move on. Here's some commercial products that are available to all of you. There's the biodynamic preparations, which are here. There's probably one of the world's best Steiner expert, Glenn Atkinson's, has a company called Biodynamics. His products are based on biodynamics, and they are accepted into a lot of mainstream agriculture for various things. There's a new company in New Zealand called Penergetics. It's actually a Swiss company, and they bring in a whole range of products. Stuart Cheney in Auckland, and I think there's a distributor in the South Island, and they're based on energy balancing. Homeopathic, of course. Many of you will know Ewan Campbell and his farm, Eco Farm Probitas, has products that also have an energy component to them. And there's a company in the U.S. called Paralandra. Okay, so now here's the tool part, and we're going to do a little demonstration. We've got here the tools you can use to analyze your farm and to influence your farm. Okay, so we've got pendulums, we've got dowsing rods, muscle testing. People familiar with muscle testing? Largely used in the world of health, but can be used in the world of farming as well. Radionics, voltmeters, and I'll probably save Veda. Do people know Veda Austin? Okay, Veda Austin's works amazing, and a thing called chromatography. But I want to get to this part, okay? So here's some tools we can use. We're going to do a little demo here. How much time have I got? 5 minutes? 10. Okay, that's good. So let's just whiz through these few photos here. Pendulums, dowsing rods, next. Okay, stop there for a second. Dowsing rods, who's used pendulums? Oh, good. How many people have used dowsing rods? Heaps. God, this is going to be easy. Any other form? Muscle testing. How many people have used muscle testing? Okay, we've got a tuned-in crowd here. Excellent. All right, so go ahead. So dowsing, just a picture of dowsing rods. Radionics, kind of leaving that one out a little bit. Bit technical. Next. There's a book online you can get if you want to build a radionics machine. There's, I think, the website there next. Muscle testing. Yeah, I think we'll just move on. We'll talk about that. Okay, stop there. So Waitawheta Austin, I'll just do this briefly. Waitawheta Austin is following up on work by a Japanese guy named Emoto, who did a lot of crystal photography with freezing. What she does is she takes, and I've got her book here you can glance through, she takes a small amount of water and influences with an image or a thought and freezes it and gets a photograph. So this is a picture of this picture put on top of a piece of water and frozen for 30 seconds. And that's the image that came out. And her whole thing is that she is showing very vividly that water has memory and a lot more power than people might think. Chromatography, people heard of that? Okay, that's just another way to, it's a visual way to assess soils and look at things. And again, move on. That's good enough. Okay, so here we go. Here's the next thing. What I need is 5 volunteers. Come up. Come up. You need to get, yeah, one more, and one more woman. Now, let's get, you've got to have 2 women. You're out of line. Yeah, one more woman. Oh, you got beat. Oh, well, that's okay. Okay. So, here we go. And who's done dowsing before? Have you done dowsing before?
Unsuccessfully. I use pendulums a lot in muscle testing.
I've done it with rods.
Okay, you've done it with rods. We're gonna. Have you done dowsing or pendulums? No, you? No. Okay. All right. So there we go. So the idea behind pendulums, and I find this a curious thing, is that you hold it, you ask a question that you get a yes or no answer out of, and then you can ask a series of yes or no questions to move you in a particular direction. So generally the first thing you do is you find out, so the pendulum can work 2 ways, and what you're doing is you're asking the universe, so to speak, or you're tuning into something else beyond yourself, but maybe it is within yourself, that's giving you answers, all right? And the more specific the question, the better the answer can be. And so you can use this to test the minerals in your soil. You can go around your farm and find out if your calcium is high or low, and you can get much more specific. Now, I'll be honest, I have not done a lot with this. In fact, I was a total disbeliever until just recently when I started to put this talk together and said, I better try this because it's kind of mean to make people do it. And so I'm going to set this down for a minute, or I'll hand it here to Annie, and I'll just talk loudly. I hope people can hear me. So the couple of things that I've learned is that there's a couple of different ways. There's a couple of different ways to use them. One is that you first ask which way is yes or no. And the pendulum will do a couple of things. It'll either spin one way or the other way to tell you what's yes and no, or sometimes it just swings back and forth. Okay? And there are different ways to use them. But you do what's called neutralizing it. So you'll ask, you try to get it to a neutral position, and then you'll hold it. And I have found you shouldn't look at it. I don't like looking at it because then I think the influence is different. And I find out if I'm getting a yes or no. And then I'll ask the question, am I a bad person? Should we vote for Trump? No. And then I'll get an answer. Now, a couple of things with a pendulum is, so you do that, and then you give it a minute, and then you look at it. You've got to accept the first answer you get, okay? It's got to be an immediate thing. Sometimes you don't get an answer, all right? What I also find interesting is how many people understand how computers work. Binary, right? They ask a bazillion yes and no questions, and that's how they get the answer. So you go, well, I got too many questions. I'll never have time. You get better at it. You'll get faster at it, okay? So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you to hold it with both hands in front of you like that, right from the top. So it hangs down. Yep. and then try to get it to stop. You can set it down on your leg, or just get it to be neutral, and then ask it to ask it. You can close your eyes or look up and just ask it which direction is yes. Go ahead, do that now. Okay, now have a look. Okay, we got a strong response here, a little response there, a little response there. You've got a little response and a little response. Okay, so that tells you which direction it's going to go when you ask the question. Okay, so now send it back to neutral. Just get it neutral, and I'm going to have you all ask this question, and we're going to see if we get an answer. All right, everybody ready? Okay. Should New Zealand adopt genetic modification?
Look at mine's face.
Okay. We probably will. What do we got? Okay, what did you get? Be honest. No, you cheated. Okay, ask again.
You were saying before, you have to take the first indication that you get when you had actually asked about that, because I'd done it before and it was going anti-clockwise for yes, which I so yes, it was doing clockwise. So for no.
No.
Yeah.
Did you get an answer?
I felt as though there was a slight no response there, but it was almost.
It can be very slight, you know.
Yeah.
Anything?
Mine's blown in the wind.
Okay, blown in the wind, that's a problem too. Okay, okay. Did you cheat? No. No. Do you feel like you didn't jiggle it or move it? Yeah, well, you can. Yeah. Okay. You will, I mean, it's a process of learning over time. You have to learn to trust the system. You can do this with dowsing rods. You can do it with muscle testing. There's a variety of ways to do it. One of the, let's see. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Okay, yeah, we're just about to flick the forward, please. Okay. This is one of my favorite quotes from a guy named Bruce Tenio, who did a lot of energy work in the U.S. and had some amazing results. And he says, if you want to change or improve something on your farm, write your intention on a piece of paper and pin it to a tree. Okay? And trees are great antennas and broadcasters of your intention. However, if you doubt this will work for even a moment, it will not. Okay, now I don't know how many of you could write something and pin it to a tree and not doubt it just a little bit. So that's how difficult probably some of this is. I believe that probably meditation can help you go down this path if you choose to go down this path. And, you know, you can play with these things and see where it takes you. And, you know, this is just sort of an introduction. I believe that this is the next main arena of agriculture. Thank you.